All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Rayanam Namaskritya Naram Shaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nastapareshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Reading from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7. Further Inquiries by Vidura. Verse number 6. Bhagavan Eka Evaisha Sarva Kshetreshu Avatishta Amusya Durbhagavatam Va Klesho Va Karmabhi Kuta Bhagavan Eka Evaisa Sarva Ksheteshu Vashtita Amusya Durbhagavatam Va Kleshova Karma Bhikuta Bhagavan Eka Evaisha Sarva Kshetreshvavashtita Amusya Durbhagavatam Va Kleshova Karma Bhikuta Bhagavan Eka Evaisha Sarva Kshetreshavashtita Amusya Durbhagavatam Va Kleshova Karma Bhikuta. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Eka, alone. Eva, Esha, all these. Sarva, all. Setreshu, in the living entities. Avastitaha, situated. Amusya, of the living entities. Dur-Bhāgavatam, misfortune. Va, either. Klesha, universe. Va, or. Karma be, by activities. Kuta, what for? Translation. The Lord, as the Supersoul, is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities' activities result in misfortune and misery? Please repeat. The Lord, as the Supersoul, is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities' activities result in misfortune and misery? Purport by His Divine Grace, ISKCON's founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. The next question put forward by Vidura to Maitreya is, why are the living entities subjected to so many miseries and misfortunes in spite of the Lord's presence in their hearts as the Supersoul? The body is considered a fruitful tree, and the living entity and the Lord as Supersoul are like two birds seated in that tree. The individual soul is eating the fruit of the tree, but the Supersoul, the Lord, is witnessing the activities of the other bird. A citizen of the state may be in miseries for want of sufficient supervision by the state authority, but how can it be possible that a citizen suffers from other citizens while the chief of the state is personally present? From another point of view, it is understood that the jiva living entity is qualitatively one with the Lord, and thus his knowledge in the pure state of life cannot be covered by nescience, especially in the presence of the Lord. How then does the living entity become subjected to ignorance and covered by the influence of Maya? The Lord is the Father and Protector of every living entity, and He is known as the Bhuta Brit, or the maintainer of the living entities. Why then should the living entity be subjected to so many sufferings and misfortunes? It should not be so. But actually we see that it happens everywhere. This question is therefore put forward by Vidura for solution. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Nitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Gadam Mayam Didati Sva Badantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shriuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vidham Dham Sajivam Sadvaitam Savdutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptan Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Brindavaneshvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gora Bhaktabrinda Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Ram Hare Hare Bhagavan Eka Evaisha Sara Kshetre Shavashtita Amusya Dur Bhagavatam Va Klesho Va Karma Bhi Kuta. The Lord, as the Supersoul, is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities' activities result in misfortune and misery? So, the chapter entitled Further Inquiries by Vidura. This is predominantly questioning, we're looking at what is the position of the living entity, and also what is the position of the Lord, and what is their interrelation. So there's been a pause in the description by Maitreya to Vidura about the process of creation, how the Lord manifests his incarnations for creation, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and subsequently all the different constituents of this universe. So these particular questions and Maitreya's reply goes to verse 21 and 22 of this chapter. So the next series of classes will be on this. These are very nice verses. Maitreya has defeated the Mayavad philosophy. We see in verse 9, certain conditioned souls put forward the theory that the Supreme Brahman, or the personality of Godhead, is overcome by illusion or Maya, and at the same time they maintain he is unconditioned. This is against all logic. The living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual knowledge, like a man who dreams that he has seen his head cut off. So Maitreya is, you will see in these verses coming, he is describing the living entity's bewilderment. Ultimately, it is based on his forgetfulness of his relationship with the Lord. And the whole problem is solved by engaging once again in the Lord's direct devotional service. The misconception of self-identity can be diminished gradually by the mercy of the personality of Godhead Vasudeva through the process of devotional service to the Lord in the mode of detachment. When the senses are satisfied as the seer supersoul, the personality of Godhead, and merged in him, all miseries are completely vanquished, as if after a sound sleep. Simply by chanting and hearing of the transcendental name, form, etc. of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one can achieve the cessation of unlimited miserable conditions. Therefore, what to speak of those who have attained attained attraction for serving the flavor of the dust of the Lord's lotus feet. So, like we're hearing in today's verse, Dur Bhagavatam, misfortune, all different types of misfortune. The living entity is subjected to so many sufferings and misfortunes. Why is he? Unlimited miserable conditions. Vidura's reply to these wonderful answers by Maitreya: O powerful sage, my Lord, all my doubts about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities have now been removed by your convincing words. My mind is now perfectly entering into them. So the importance of hearing from the self-realized soul, the authorized representative of Krishna, the spiritual master, is extolled most happily and blissfully and triumphantly by Vidura. The science of Krishna, or the science of God and the living entity, is so subtle that even a personality like Vidura has to consult persons like the sage Maitreya. Doubts about the eternal relationship of the Lord and the living entity are created by mental speculators in different ways. But the conclusive fact is that the relationship of God and the living entity is one of the predominator and predominated. The Lord is the eternal predominator, and the living entities are eternally predominated. Real knowledge of this relationship entails reviving the lost consciousness to this standard. So, actually, devotional service is gradated. There are different levels, and this very simple formula, as described here, can be applied in our understanding of the levels of devotional service. Concurrently, and or also explained, the devotional service of the devotee, of the candidate for pure devotional service, is graded by Shraddha, or faith. Prabhupada says, faith means trust in something sublime. Faith is such that as it becomes firm and cemented, level to level, one becomes more firm in one's ability to act in devotional service. Krishna is looking for that faith, and it's as described, matir smitim jnanam apohanam cha. I am in everyone's heart, and I give them knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness in accord with their desire. Prabhupada, lecturing on the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita in London in July 1973, said that if you want to forget Krishna, then Krishna will give you the intelligence to forget him forever. He will give you the intelligence to become a very first-class atheist and demon like Kamsa, Hiranyakashipu, or Ravana. But if you want the intelligence to how to render pure devotional service and to render and offer your heart in pure love, then Krishna will give you the intelligence to come to the topmost position in devotional service. And how much more he's inclined to help a living entity ascend to the highest position in devotional service, as opposed to help a living entity become a Ravana or a Kamsa or Hiranyakashipu. Real knowledge of this relationship entails reviving the lost consciousness to this standard. And the process for such revival is devotional service to the Lord. By clearly understanding from authorities like the sage Maitreya, one can become situated in real knowledge, and the detached mind can thus be fixed on the progressive path. O learned sage, your explanations are very good, as they should be. Disturbance to the conditioned soul, disturbances to the conditioned soul have no other basis than the movement of the external energy of the Lord. The false attempt of the living entity to occupy the predominating post of the Lord is the cause of his material bondage. And the conditioned soul's attempt to become one with the Lord is the last snare of Maya. The so-called self-imagined clever Mayavadi is simply a cheating conditioned soul, avoiding the basic principle to accept the position as the predominator and give up the insane idea to try to become the predominator, or what to speak of the false idea to become equal with the predominator. The predominator is exclusively and unrivaledly, that's not a word, the predominator, and everyone else's position is eternally the predominated. And then this statement, which is quite graphic, but to the point, very interesting. Both the lowest of fools and he was transcendental to all intelligence enjoy happiness, whereas persons between them suffer the material pangs. And Prabhupada helps us understand this extreme difference. The lowest of fools do not understand material miseries. They pass their lives merrily. Prabhupada would, a lot of times, in using the word merrily, eat, drink, and be merry. And I don't think I ever heard Prabhupada say this, but we use the, what is that little jingle, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 but a dream. Such persons are almost on the level of the animals, who, although in the eyes of superiors are always miserable in life, are unaware of material distresses. A hog's life is degraded in its standard of happiness, which entails living in a filthy place, engaging in sex enjoyment at every opportune moment, and laboring hard in a struggle for existence. But this is unknown to the hog. And then Prabhupada goes on to describe the human beings who are happy in this way are no better than hogs. The other class of men, those who are liberated and are situated in the transcendental position above intelligence, are really happy and are called Paramahamsas. But persons who are neither like hogs and dogs, nor on the level of the Paramahamsas, feel the material pangs, and for them inquiry about the supreme truth is necessary. Certainly at the time that this was spoken, over 5,000 years ago, the class between the two was a much, you would have like the lowest of fools, the hogs, it would be like this percent, then the Paramahamsas over here, this, and then it would be the majority. So right now, that's changed. Lowest of fools, living merrily, it's like, whew, huge percentage. And those who are actually perceiving the material pangs and realizing and acknowledging and feeling that I don't like this, I don't want this. There must be something better, there must be something higher. They're very, very few. But the process of Lord Chaitanya's Yuga Dharma Sankirtan movement is so wonderful that one who is loyal to the Sankirtan movement, of whom Srila Prabhupada is the greatest example, that by his calling, it's described in the light of the Bhagavad, chapter 20 of the 10th canto, how is it? I forget the analogy. It's something that students don't rise of their own accord. In the rainy season, the frogs start, is it the frogs start croaking? Anyway, maybe somebody can remember what the analogy is. But the idea is that students don't rise of their own accord unless there is a bell sounded in the in the school or the cultural institution. Similarly, in this age of Kali, everyone is sleeping in the darkness of ignorance. But when a great Acharya appears, only by his calling does everyone arise awake and actually engage in the duties of the human form of life. Jeev Jago, Gora Chandra Bole. And that medicine that has been brought by that most merciful Lord Gora Chandra and his authorized devotees is simply the Maha Mantra, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Adato Brahma Jignasan. Now one should inquire about the Brahman. This inquiry is necessary for those who are between the Paramahamsas and the fools who have forgotten the question of self-realization in the midst of life and sense gratification. And in conclusion, before moving on or going back to the original topics of the process of creation, praise by Vidura to Maitreya, which includes, we'll see, this verse 19, very beautiful glorification of the spiritual master. My dear sir, I am obliged to you because now I can understand that this material manifestation is without substance. Although it appears real, I am confident that by serving your feet, it will be possible for me to give up the false idea. So only by serving the pure devotee, that's described in the 5th canto in relationship to Jud Bharat and Maharaj Rahugana. When he came to his senses and understood that Jud Bharat wasn't a deaf and dull person who was conscripted by his servants to become a palanquin carrier, but he was the most advanced Paramahamsa, and he begged pardon for the offenses he had made. He had asked, how did you achieve such a state of self-realization? And Jud Bharat said, unless one has the opportunity to smear one's entire body from head to toe with the dust from the lotus feet of a great personality, Paramahamsa, it is not possible to achieve self-realization. It is very difficult for the common man or the neophyte in the transcendental path to realize perfectly spiritual knowledge. However, by serving the feet of great transcendentalists like Maitreya Muni, and by constantly associating with them, one is enabled to give up the false idea that the soul suffers from material pangs. Yat sevaya bhagavata kuta stasya madhu dvisha rati raso bhavet tivra padayor vyasanar dana. By serving the feet of the spiritual master, one is enabled to develop transcendental ecstasy in the service of the personality of Godhead, who is the unchangeable enemy of the Madhu demon and whose service vanquishes one's material distresses. And finally, before going back to the original topics, persons whose austerity is meager can hardly obtain the service of the pure devotees who are progressing on the path back to the kingdom of God, the Vaikunthas. Pure devotees engage 100% in glorifying the Supreme Lord, who is the Lord of the demigods and the controller of all living entities. The system of association has been recommended since time immemorial, but in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, it is especially recommended by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is why we go out every day for as many hours a day as possible to give the mass of people our association. And the highest form of association with pure devotees is when pure devotees come together in congregational Harinam Sankirtan to chant on the platform of actual purification and realization in ecstasy the holy name of Krishna. This is the supreme form of devotional service, as Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur has described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, of all that is to be taught and of all that is to be learned or understood, the culmination of all knowledge. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself says, Vidya Vadu Jivanam, the life and soul of all transcendental knowledge, is mass Harinam Sankirtan. We don't give the people our association that we speculate or we to talk about mundane topics. We give association to understand, to give everyone the opportunity to hear and chant the glories of the Lord. Even if one has no assets of favorable austerity, if he nevertheless takes shelter of the Mahatmas who are engaged in chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord, he is sure to make progress on the path back home, back to Godhead. And as this is the approved process, personally and actually exclusively demonstrated by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he left the subsequent task of expanding the knowledge of chanting the glories of the Lord in the form of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to his subsequent disciples in disciplic succession to compile Bhakti Shastra, transcendental literatures, to further the sublime aim of Lord Chaitanya's own Sankirtan movement, the extension and expansion of the Lord's original vacha, or chanting. So Prabhupada, when his disciples would ask, how are they possibly qualified to receive such great good fortune when good fortune comes about? And Prabhupada simply said, I have created your good fortune. Who knew that I would come to his shelter? Prabhupada is describing in great love and appreciation on his spiritual master's disappearance day. I was born in a different family. He was born in a different family. Who knew that I would come to his shelter? Who knew that you American boys and girls would come to me? These are all Krishna's arrangements. So if Prabhupada had not been burning with intensity for decades to fulfill the order of his spiritual master, which ultimately culminated in, at the age of 69, getting on a cross two oceans, Indian Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, come with no money, etc., etc., live in the Upper West Side of New York City through the coldest winter in decades, then come live in the Bowery, not knowing who would come forward to support, but having absolute faith in Krishna's protection via the order of his spiritual master. By that he has become, he always was, but we can say he has become an ocean of transcendental mercy. So, becoming a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so glorious. And we see the emblem of pure devotional service via the order of the spiritual master to such a superlative degree as Srila Prabhupada, that it is so attractive and inspiring and encouraging to try to follow, try to do our level best in accord with our capacity and beyond even what we consider to be our capacity to help Srila Prabhupada in his service to his spiritual master. All right. Bhagavan Eka Evaisha Sarva Kshetresha Vashtitaha Amusya Dur Bhagavatam Va Klesho Va Karmabhi Kuta. The Lord, as the Supersoul, is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities' activities result in misfortune and misery? Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna. I was just thinking, you were mentioning how now to the extent that the level of mudhas has increased, proportionally speaking, the population of the mudhas has increased. Can you hear me? Yeah, population of the mudhas has increased, and so I was wondering, how does one determine if they're, reaching out to them becomes an over endeavor? At what point do you say, okay, this is too much, this person's not going to understand, or do we just, keep trying to?
Well, if they don't stop and they keep going by, it's a pretty good indication. What is that in Sad Goswami Astakam? By pouring upon them transcendental songs about Govinda. How is it? They purified the conditioned souls by Sri Govinda. What is that? Verse number 3, Sad Goswami Astakam. Govinda Ganamritai. Right. They purify the conditioned souls of their sinful reactions, their sinful karma, by pouring upon them transcendental songs about Govinda. So, someone who might not be ready or able to take a book today, after repeated association with Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, may very well be able to later. So, I remember when we were in Hamilton Heights, and your Guru Maharaj came and gave class, and I brought up 4th Canto, 29th chapter, I forget the verse number. The Lord, in the purport, seeing the devotees' merciful attempt to reach out to the fallen conditioned souls, the Lord mercifully, based on the devotees' hard work and attempt to do so, enlightens the people from within automatically. We see the glory of Prabhupada's Markani Bhagavat Dharma, written at 18th September 1965 in the Commonwealth Pier, Boston, Massachusetts, that I wish that you may deliver them. And Prabhupada, Krishna, of course it is was Krishna's order and Krishna's desire that Prabhupada enact his mission in everything that he did. All the adversity of the magazine, BTG magazine with Prabhupada crossing the street at 26 2nd Avenue there in Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada's overcoming of adversity. This is all done by the Lord to glorify Srila Prabhupada. Even the non-devotees, they have a book, what was it? Guinness Book of Records of amazing late life achievers, people who achieved something extraordinary after the age of 70. And they look at it, from like numbers of dollars and cents. He comes with, $7 of Indian rupees, which couldn't be exchanged into dollars when he got here. And he was not, actually, his first money was $20 from Captain Pandya from buying the Bhagavatams, and let him keep $2 change because they were $6 each. And then you read later that same, what was it, 40 rupees? Then when Prabhupada landed in Delhi on Pan Am to fly back to India in July 1967 with Kirtanananda in a wool tweed suit in 110-degree heat, and they got in a taxi, and Prabhupada said, go to Old Delhi, Chippiwada. The taxi driver just took the whole thing and didn't give any change. And a big, loud argument ensued, and ultimately Srila Prabhupada realized that he had stolen the money. There's no policeman around. So that same 40 rupees was... So, kind of got off the direct track of the question. The Lord becomes the devotee of his devotee. Actually, Prabhupada revealed in that health crisis, seeming heart attack of 1967, where Prabhupada instructed the devotees to perform 24-hour kirtan and offer a simple prayer, "My dear Lord Krishna, our master has not yet finished his work." Prabhupada later revealed that Krishna wanted to bring him back home, back to Godhead, and he was praying, and he asked the Lord, "No, I've just begun my work. I can't leave. I've got to keep going." And according to Prabhupada, Krishna said, "All right, stay and do your nonsense." As if Prabhupada's activities from 1967 for the next 10 years were nonsensical. But this is loving relationship between the Lord and his devotee. And Prabhupada's purity of purpose, absolutely no ulterior motive. If you go through very joyously to listen to the now 82 plus hour and a half, 2 hour long segments of Prabhupada memories, which Siddhanta very Prabhu intelligently began in the early 1990s. This is towards the end of each one. The general question is, what was Srila Prabhupada's most outstanding feature or quality? And again and again and again, practically everyone says Prabhupada's unconditional love for us is the memoir of Jayananda. He's the first person I met who didn't want to cheat me. I just simply wanted to serve him. So, and Prabhupada even pointed out that even amongst highly placed devotees, there can be ulterior motives and improper motivations which can cloud and disturb the harmonious cooperation amongst the contemporary Vaishnava society to, in a unified way, push forward Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement and fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya. When will Srila Rupa Goswami when will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada was established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet. So Srila Prabhupada is on the highest standard of, as we were saying, understanding the position of the predominator and the predominated. So as Prabhupada is such an attractive personality, one Mataji was describing one Los Angeles airport arrival visit, and she, I think seeing him for the first time, was just so ecstatic and just leaping in the air, and she was remembering how Prabhupada was looking at her with great surprise, and such a, to be in such a demonstrative, transcendentally demonstrative position in ecstasy. That, and she was saying that Prabhupada is such an ecstatic personality. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Rantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Shri Radha Govinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol.